The Gloriana set by ThebeMoon. Read by LMX Mabella. Chapter 50. Knockturn. Draco looked a bit grim as they neared Knockturn, and Hermione couldn't blame him. Accusatory potions, a run-in with his mother, now a meeting with a vampire. This hadn't been his best day. They both pulled up the hoods of their cloaks as they passed through the alley's shadowy entrance.
"Stay close to me,"
Draco said.
"You stay close to me,"
Hermione returned. He held her wand inside her cloak pocket and strode ahead into the narrow, winding street, forcing Draco to follow. He growled at this, but he couldn't pass her, since hags and vagrants and decrepit stalls selling suspicious wares had narrowed the street farther. A large tattooed wizard with yellow eyes and a bulbous nose stomped towards them from the opposite direction, ladling a long black whip. He slashed an old hag trying to scuttle away, prompting Hermione to draw her wand. Draco pushed Hermione's arm down and shoved her back against the wall.
"Draco," she hissed, "stop charging into trouble,"
Draco said, and still on her arm.
"I could take him,"
she snapped.
"That's not what we're here for."
"Not the hag."
"I know," he hissed, "but if you start hexing every mean person in Knockturn, we'll never get to the blood-sucking friend before someone chases him off, and wouldn't that be terrible?"
Draco looked around.
"Who knows how many chaps will come out of the woodwork if you face off with someone like that? You're not invincible, you know."
"Well, look," he protested, pointing. The wizard's whip had destroyed a pile of wooden crates holding a street vendor's supply of disembodied hands. All the hands were getting out, clutching people's cloaks and crawling up walls like cockroaches.
"Come on,"
Draco said, releasing her arm and putting his own around her waist.
"Let's go. Merlin, I can't believe you came here last month without causing a riot."
"We'll need to talk about all this grabbing of hands and arms," Hermione said as he pulled her farther along the alley. They made it halfway through the pub without mishap, until Draco caused a small scene outside Borgin and Burke's. A stowaway disembodied hand had crawled up his leg, reaching his upper thigh before he'd noticed. Draco started tugging the hand off, but the fingers held fast to his trousers, and Hermione cast a tiny spark at the hand that hit the wizard's leg instead. He was flailing so wildly. She could see Borgin's pale face peering through his shop's grimy windows.
"Eh!"
Draco very nearly squealed as the green fingers moved upwards again. Furious, he shoved his wand into the hand and exploded it, splattering hand guards all over the shop window and their cloaks. Borgin's face vanished. By the time they reached the White Wyvern, Hermione was giggling and Draco was sputtering with rage.
"You should have seen your face," she gasped, "when the hand got chopped near." "Don't you dare finish this sentence,"
he growled.
"Just look at my cloak."
He tried to shake the blood off the thick cloth. Hermione looked at her own cloak and sighed. "Well, now we fit right in." They did 3 rounds of the Wyvern before they found Vazil. That was only because the vampire came out of the shadows and almost stepped on their feet. The 3 of them quickly withdrew to a corner table, and what looked like a half-tro came by and stamped the 3 foaming steins in front of them. "Don't drink it," Hermione said.
"Do I look stupid?"
Draco retorted. Hermione turned to Vazil. "I hope you won't waiting long."
"I am honored you would deign to meet me, Princessa,"
the vampire purred. Draco pulled Hermione's chair closer to him.
"Let's get on with it."
"Vazil, have you learned anything new about blood curses and messages?" Hermione asked.
"Yes,"
he answered.
"I have spoken with a few scholars of these dark arts. Your school may be under some sort of blood spell. The spellcaster does not directly write the message, but casts a spell on the entire castle. If words appear on the wall, this is a very bad sign."
"What? He's making jokes now?" Draco asked. Hermione ignored this. "But Vazil," she said, "Hogwarts is the most protected and warded building in Britain. How could it be affected by a curse?"
"Magical buildings, they are the most dangerous,"
Vazil said.
"This spell twists the inherent magic of the walls."
Hermione and Draco exchanged glances.
"More messages will likely appear elsewhere in the castle,"
the vampire continued.
"In your case, the message is aimed at those born of muggers, those whom we call commons, the ordinary. This is not necessarily a curse, simply a manifestation of the blood used in this spell. The blood of a powerful witch or wizard with great hatred of commons.
What is the purpose of the spell, then? Hermione asked. The vampire shook his head, the light from the guttering candle behind him shining on his black hair.
There is no way of knowing, Princessa. The spell itself may not be hostile, only the message.
How do we lift the spell? Draco asked.
The spellcaster must reapply the blood of the magical being used in the spell and cast a counterspell.
The vampire pulled a slim book from his cloak, a book so old it was practically crumbling. Basil placed it on the table, and only when he had removed his thin white hand, a hand even paler than Draco's, did Hermione pick up the book. Curse of Home and Hearth. A rather homey title, but the faded cover was blood-stained and the book fell open in Hermione's hand, revealing an engraved picture of victims being crushed by rubble. Have you ever seen this book? She asked Draco, handing it to him. Draco shook his head. Hermione turned back to Basil. May I borrow it?
Anything in my humble possession is yours, Princessa,
Basil said. Draco scowled. Hermione nodded, then pulled out her beaded bag from under the table, tucking the book inside. Basil, all I told you about my blood potion. The solution turns a deep purple when matching blood is dropped into it. The vampire nodded. She cleared her throat nervously. This morning, we tested it with blood from the messages. When we added my blood, it stayed clear. Not a match, but when we added Draco's blood. She looked at Draco, whose mouth was a thin line. Then she pulled the vial out of the bag and placed it on the table. The pale purple color was obvious even in the dim light. Basil became very still, dark eyes on Draco. His face shifted, thin black eyebrows drawing down to a V, and the red line of his mouth widening dangerously. The pointed tips of his fangs emerged. The vampire began to rise, spreading his cloak slightly. When he spoke, his voice was thick with stark intent.
And you are convinced, Princessa, that this man did not?
Yes, Basil, she said, flinging her left arm over Draco's chest. Shadows seemed to gather round the vampire who bared his fangs farther. His eyes glittered. Draco himself sat frozen. Basil, I am certain he did not cause these messages, she went on. Draco told the Aurors on the Veritaserum that he did not write the messages or cast a spell. I trust him. Please, Basil. The vampire resumed his seat, but shadow still lingered, and the smoothness of his face did not return.
Then this man's blood may have been used somehow, as what you call a setup?
Without his knowledge. Draco, she said, turning to him, you mentioned some Death Eater rituals. Draco's face was stone as he considered. Yes, enough could have been spilled. Few members became fond of Sectum Sempra. Hermione stared at him in horror, then took his hand and squeezed it hard. Basil was still looking at the vial, holding it to the torchlight in his long and possibly thin fingers.
You say the potion turns purple when the magical blood is used?
Yes, she said. It turns a... Her eyes opened wide. Basil nodded.
Blood will tell. It is not, yet it is.
Will somebody kindly share what is going on? Draco asked with a dangerous politeness. The messages on the wall wasn't written with your blood, Hermione said. The blood likely came from Lucius. Draco stared at them with amazement. That's not possible. It's very possible, Hermione said. A close relationship of blood, so the potion turned purple. Not the deep purple a perfectly matching sample would create, but close enough. Does that mean my blood can curse the curse? Draco asked. Basil shook his head.
Your blood is diluted by that of your mother's. Better it is that the donor's blood is used.
How are we to get blood from Lucius? Hermione asked.
I have some ideas,
Draco said darkly.
No great amount would be needed,
Azir said.
You must find the spellcaster who will place the blood on the castle wall. The building's very walls would absorb the power, just as the castle absorbed the original spell.
So this spell could have been cast anywhere, any time at Hogwarts, but the messages turned up on the Gryffindor Tower wall, Draco said.
Yes, the stronger the curse, the more quickly the message would reveal itself.
Bazil said.
A few days, perhaps. I would say the spell sensed young Lord Malfoy and was drawn to him.
Hermione turned to Draco. We have to tell Harry, she said. We have to tell him now. Draco nodded and stood. Hermione did as well and smiled at Bazil. Thank you, she said. You have been a true friend to us. The vampire bowed.
It has been an honor, Princessa.
He walked into a shadowed corner and disappeared. Draco stepped forward, looking into the corner, but the vampire was gone. I do not like him. We need to talk to Harry, Hermione said. He can help us. How? He asked as they re-entered Knockturn Alley. How can you precious pothead? They stopped suddenly. There was a scream and a crash and splintering of wood. A fight had broken out between two hooded figures pushing carts of mud. Hermione halted and Draco stepped in front of her. Move, she hissed. I can't see. He glared at her. Haven't you had enough entertainment today? Hermione, peeking over Draco's arm, saw one figure draw out a long object. Oh no, he's got a wand, Draco! She dragged him down just before curses began ricocheting off stone walls. Come on, she snapped, crawling into a nearby shop. Draco followed. It was a very small shop and quite deserted. Cobwebs covered the shelves, and when Hermione and Draco stood, their cloaks were covered in dirt, dust, and rat droppings, as well as handcuts. Charming, Draco said, looking around. You know, Hermione said, pushing back her hood, I'm not convinced having you with me makes me any safer. My last visit to Knockturn Alley was quite uneventful. Draco gave her a dirty look as she tried to brush off his cloak. Hermione peeked out of the shop's tiny window. They're still fighting out there, she said. We should just go to Harry's now. He sighed. Very well, but first. His voice cut off as Hermione grabbed his arm and apparated them to 12 Grimmauld Place. What are you doing? Draco shouted, pulling his arm away. You could have splinched me. Nonsense. I side-apparated Harry and Ron all the time during the war, and an invisibility cloak too, she said. He glared down at her. If that's true, I just want to go on record saying that you deserve any amount of arm-grabbing. It wouldn't kill you to be a little more trusting, she said. Yes, it could, he cried. It almost did. She squinted up at him. You're still upset about that disembodied hand, aren't you? It's not like it touched your guys. I was standing in his open doorway. Would you like to come in? Hermione and Draco glared at each other, then followed him into the house. Harry shuffled down the hallway, past the now permanently silenced portrait of Walburga Black, then led them into the white, bright kitchen that Hermione and Ron had helped him paint yellow over the summer. Tea? He asked. Sorry, no coffee. Potter? Draco drawled. Do you intend to stay dressed like that? What? Harry ran his hand through his spectacularly messy black hair, glasses sliding down his nose. He was wearing boxers, socks, and a too-tight Weasley sweater with a big H on the chest. Why not? It's my weekend off. Yeah, Draco, why not? Hermione asked. Draco raised his eyebrows significantly. You're kidding, she said. It's Harry. I've seen his boxers plenty of times. Draco looked over at Harry, who was dunking a tea bag into his mug. Hermione and I lived in a tent together, Harry said with a wide grin. Alone for a month. Actually, I think that's my sweater, Hermione said, looking him over. Probably, Harry said, smirking at Draco. Perhaps I should leave the two of you alone, Draco said icily. Sounds great, Harry said. He turned to Hermione. What are you doing running around with him? He looked them both up and down. Where have you two been? Is there blood? Nocturnally, Hermione said, taking off her cloak. Draco continued to stand stiffly still, looking down his nose at them. Oh, for Godric's sake, Draco, there's nothing between me and Harry, she snapped. Take off your cloak. With bad grace, the Slytherin peeled off his filthy cloak before seating himself at the table. Harry just leaned against the counter and sipped his tea, still grinning. It was up to her, as usual, to be the adult and pour herself and Draco some tea and sit down. Draco still had a dirty streak down one cheek, and his hair was ruffled and dusty, but what he didn't know wouldn't hurt him. Harry then took a seat at the table as well, yawning. You two still haven't explained to me why you're at my house together, looking like you've come through a war zone. Which part should we tell him first? She asked Draco. It's your meeting, Draco said, sounding bored. Hermione reached out and took Harry's hand in both of hers, which made Draco glower again. Harry, Draco and I are together. Harry looked between the two of them. Together? Hermione nodded. Draco gave a jerk of his head that might have been a nod. Aren't you dating not? Harry asked, confused. Wasn't that picture of you kissing him on the... She is not dating Theo not, Draco rapped out. She is dating me. Your aura skills obviously need honing. Harry freed his hand from Hermione's and jumped to his feet, and suddenly his boxers and sweater weren't funny anymore. What did you do to her? He said in a dangerously soft tone. Draco stood as well, as did Hermione, who couldn't decide which one to talk down first. Draco was taller, but Harry's muscles were defined from aura training, and both sets of eyes, grey and green, were equally cold. She decided to answer Harry since it was his house. He planned to have Neville there, not Draco, but it couldn't be helped. He didn't do anything to me, Harry. Not much yet, anyway. We have feelings for each other, and we're dating now. He's already written his mother, and I was going to tell you and Ron tomorrow. Feelings? Harry looked ready to have a stroke. You turn up on my doorstep, snapping at Malfoy covered in blood and dirt, just to tell me you have feelings? He turned on Draco. I saw the way you were looking at her in McGonagall's office, but I told myself, no, she can handle herself. Obviously, I was wrong and you're going to pay. I'd like to see you try, Potter. Maybe a stint in Azkaban can teach you to keep your slimy hands off. Harry! Hermione shouted, now holding her wand between them. I swear I'll hex both of you if you don't sit down now. The two men looked at her with identical outraged expressions, then reluctantly sat down. Hermione remained standing, her wand pointed at them. Now, she said, let's discuss this calmly. Harry, Draco and I are now dating. It is very new, and neither of us know where it's going to go. But Hermione, I know exactly who he is and who his family is. I know his past, and I know what he's trying to do with his future. She sighed. There are 1,000 reasons not to be with him, and only one reason to do so. I want to be with him. We are happy, or at least we could be, if we weren't constantly dealing with blood curses and crazy people. Hermione, Harry pleaded. This isn't like you. This isn't the Hermione. Actually, this is exactly like me, Hermione said. You haven't been at school with me for the last few months. Ron mentioned that you're a bit different, but we thought you were, I don't know, stressed about nudes. Oh, she's squared that, Draco said. She's got porn. The edge of Harry's mouth quirked upward, but he sobered quickly as he looked at Draco. Yes, well, Malfoy, speaking of that, I've heard things about you and your Slytherin stags, he said coldly. You are one sick bastard, I'm told, and I won't let you take advantage of Hermione. She has no experience with... Draco scoffed. Oh, please. The first time I put moves on her, she petrified me. Harry looked at Hermione. You petrified him? A little bit, she admitted. You left me frozen helpless in a dark classroom for hours, Draco snapped. You were walking toward me, Hermione cried. You took your clothes off. Hermione took her clothes off? Harry looked shocked. He was going to search me, she said. Well, it looked like he might possibly search me. What was he searching for? Harry asked. She stole a valuable snitch from me, Draco said. Silver, embossed. Quite a little work of art. He sniffed. Anyone who would offer such an object as a gift deserves nothing but respect. Harry turned back to Hermione, his aura training compelling him to get to the bottom of this. Why did you steal his snitch? so he would show me his family's rune manuscript. Harry, it was the Codex Runica, a significant relic from the early— I don't believe this, Harry said. I know, Hermione said. The Malfoys really should be more generous. Did or did I not give you hours with that codex, even after you tried to blackmail me? Draco asked her. I practically had to pin a cup to your shirt so you wouldn't drool all over the vellum. Then you put a wand to my throat. Really, Hermione? Harry asked weakly. You read my life optimization organization plan. Draco smirked. Just the sexy stuff. Harry looked at her. You have sexy stuff in your life optimization plan? She truly organizes everything, Draco said. I found the pros and cons chart quite edifying. Ew, Harry said. He looked stunned, but Hermione was relieved to see that veins were no longer popping out in his forehead. He pushed his mug of tea toward him, and he drank. Hermione and Draco looked at each other, but let Harry sit and process things a bit. In fact, they all felt better after a few quiet minutes sipping tea. Okay, I think I've got it, Harry said finally. You, Hermione, have gone mental and perhaps violent this year, and have now taken up with Draco Malfoy. And you, Malfoy, are turning your back on everything your family stands for and are going out with Hermione. He sighed. I didn't believe half of what Ron was telling me about Hogwarts this year, but I should have. Harry stood up and poured each of them another mug of tea. But none of this is telling me why the two of you turned up here looking like hell and fighting like toddlers instead of doing— He shuddered. Couple things? Hermione laughed. Couple things? Well, we've been trying all day, but all we've managed is lunch, Draco said. He turned to Hermione. That reminds me. We need to talk about those bugbears you juggled. What? Harry and Hermione both asked. Draco rolled his eyes. Just a conversation we had at lunch. You can't keep those Slytherin bugbears the way they are. I certainly can, Hermione said. You will deserve it for snorkeling. We're never eating at that caboose again. What? I can't even say caboose in front of Harry. This is ridiculous. What are you talking about? Harry asked. You don't want to know, Draco said. In other news, Hermione said, moving ahead with the agenda. We tested a blood potion today, with Draco's blood and mine. Harry looked alert. You found something? Draco's blood turned the potion purple. Harry! Hermione screamed. Her friend had lunged for his wand and was pointing it at Draco's throat. Harry's face was cold. Explain, Malfoy. He shoved the wand a little harder against Draco's skin. Harry! Hermione cried. The potion turned pale purple. The magical blood in the message isn't Draco's. It's Lucius' blood. Put the wand down. Maybe you should lead with it next time. Draco squeaked. Harry didn't move. How do you know? He asked Hermione while glaring at Draco. We still need to confirm, but it makes sense. Vazil agrees with me. Who's Vazil? Harry asked. A very nice vampire who— A vampire? Harry lowered his wand and stared at Hermione. A nice vampire? Yes, Kingsley sponsored him from Romania. Please, Harry, sit down. You too, Draco. He sat them both down and pushed their tea on them. Really, Harry, she scolded. You shouldn't threaten people with your wand like that. Harry and Draco exchanged looks of disbelief, then quickly turned away. Anyway, yes, she went on. Vazil is a very nice vampire, and I wish Draco would quit threatening him. The magical blood in the potion doesn't completely match Draco's, but we think it was enough to turn the potion purple. Hermione gave Harry a brief rundown of the spell on the Hogwarts castle. So we know a spell was recently cast in the castle by someone who hates muggles, but we don't know the spell's purpose, Harry summed up. A powerful spell like that requires blood from a powerful witch or wizard, and Lucius is the strongest dark wizard alive now, Hermione said. Somebody collected the blood and used it to cast the spell. Harry, we need a sample of Lucius' blood and a list of Lucius' visitors log. Harry's eyes were cold. Well then, the culprit is obvious. Let me guess, Malfoy. Your mother dropped by this year to sip you some sweets. Draco stood, his wand out, and Harry leaped up as well, knocking his chair to the floor. Hermione huffed. Not again. Don't you dare accuse my mother, Draco snarled. She saved your useless hide, and she would never curse the school. Hermione was standing now as well, hand in her pocket. She gave Draco a significant look. Maybe Lucius made her do it. He shook his head. I told you she doesn't wear it. Wear what? Harry asked. None of your bloody business, Draco snapped. It's my business if your family's attacking muggles again, Harry said. You claim to care about Hermione while you're... Draco's face darkened with fury and his wand was up. Expelliarmus! Hermione shouted. She tucked both their wands into her pocket and kept her own raised. Sit down, both of you. Harry and Draco obeyed, their faces identically furious. Say reason, Hermione, Harry begged. If your potion is right and it's Lucius' blood, then who else could it be but Narcissa? I don't know, Hermione said. That's where you come in. We need Lucius' visitor logs. The spellcaster has to be someone who visited both Lucius and Hogwarts. Harry said nothing, but his expression was clear. Narcissa. We also need a sample of Lucius' blood, she continued. Harry nodded. That won't be easy to do without making him suspicious. We won't need much, Draco said, just enough to test his blood against a potion and counter the spell. Can you help us, Harry? I can get the logs, Harry said heavily. I'll think about the blood. And you won't tell Kingsley about the potion yet? Harry sighed. No, I won't. Thank you, Harry. Hermione hugged him tightly, drawing a scarf from Draco. It's all right, mate. Relax. Ouch! Harry had patted her head and now had a streak of blood on his hand. Careful there now, Potter, said Draco, looking smug. Hermione glared at Draco. How soon can you get to this, Harry? She asked, handing him a napkin. Harry shrugged, holding the cloth to his head. Always routinely check Azkaban visitor logs, so it shouldn't be difficult. The logs are impossible to forge, and visitors are checked for the polyjuice potion after the Bertie Crouch incident, so they should be accurate. Splendid, Draco drawled. He stood up. We'll be running along then, Granger. Surely there's something more interesting we can be doing this afternoon. Ew, Harry said. I hadn't considered that, Draco said. But now that you mention... Get out of my house, Harry said. Hermione stood as well. Thank you, Harry. She kissed him on the top of his messy head and nodded at Draco, who left the kitchen looking rather sourly. I'll see you tomorrow for breakfast, she said. Don't bring him, Harry said, slumping in his chair. To be continued. Next up, Hermione's good study habits pay off. Thank you for listening to this chapter of the Gloriana set by ThebeMoon. If you would like to stay up to date on upcoming chapters and stories, you can follow me on YouTube, AO3 or Spotify.